Oh, it's 10:01. So I would like to get us to get started. A little housekeeping first. If anyone who is not our speaker could mute themselves until we get to the Q&A portion, that would be great. And with that, let's get underway. Uh, Please, thank you for registering for the History of the Radisson Community. Our speaker today is Bonnie Kisselstein, who is the local history librarian at Baldwinsville Public Library, and she also serves as the town historian for Lysander, New York. She is a lifelong enthusiast of local history and has spent over 30 years. She spent over 30 years teaching elementary school, primarily in the Baldwinsville Central School District. During her teaching career, she co-founded the Colonial Festival, which still engages area fourth graders with hands-on experiences in local history through artisans, crafters, and educators. She continues to support the community through her extensive volunteer work. And full disclosure, she is my mom, so she is the reason I am in library to work as a librarian today. Um, and with that, take it away.
Thank you very much, Kate. I hope everybody enjoys this. This came about, as you can see from the first screen, in January of 2008. I got asked by somebody, what do you know about, what can you tell us about Radisson? And Radisson we'll find out later, is one of the new communities that was done in the 70s. And before that, it had an extensive history, and we'll learn a little bit about that as we go along. So I revised it in 2017. So here's the history of Radisson. Whoops. Why did it not go? Because I'm not on the screen. There we go. Okay. Did you ever want, now, and I know a lot of you are not from here, but this is some things that came up as what's there now. Did you ever wonder what that strange structure represents at the Radisson entrance? How those large or big concrete bunkers on the side of the drumlin got there? Why 100 plus people who lived there 65 years ago, longer than that now, abandoned their farms? Where streets like Willett Parkway and Drake's Landing got their names? How the Three Rivers Game Management Area relates to the community. Now, whoops, sorry. I meant to say on that I'm going to back up a little bit. Whoops, it's not on that same screen. Okay, anyways, I had a map that was the Sweets Atlas, and in case you don't know, it was the military track. The soldiers from the Revolutionary War were paid by military tract lands, and all of our numbers on our older maps are, and even today, the large numbers are military tract things. Anyways, the following is partly quoted from a book from the beginning, Radisson, published by the Radisson Community Association, January 1976. The land that is now called Radisson has an extensive history. Let's start by thinking back to the prehistoric times of the Ice Age. There is evidence that the glacier covered this land twice. First time, the ice melted perhaps 10,000 years ago. An enormous body of water, Lake Iroquois, was created. It filled the Ontario Basin and covered a large part of the state, including the site of Radisson. When the ice came again, Lake Iroquois disappeared, only to be replaced by an even larger body of water that filled the St. Lawrence River Basin. During its final retreat, the glacier formed the Finger Lakes, Lake Ontario, and many of the state's physical features. We have the glaciers to thank for much of what ultimately happened here, because in forming Seneca Lake and establishing the northerly flow of its outlet, the Seneca River, which goes through Baldwinsville, it created an easy water pathway into central New York for the people who were to come. It also left a great souvenir that has played an important part in this land, the drumlin, which lies diagonally across the middle of Radisson. You'll hear more about that later. Period of exploration and early settlement. Now let's jump ahead to the time much closer to us, the period of exploration and early settlement. From this, I've found the references to this land in Pearl Palmer's writings, Historical Review of the Town of Lysander. Now, I have to add in here, Pearl Palmer was my 7th grade social studies teacher and had a tremendous effect on me as far as local history goes. She was a dynamo, and my maiden name is Palmer, and I just tried to get my genealogy related to her, but I haven't had any luck yet. But anyway, she was a wonderful lady. And from her book, which, by the way, is available to take out interlibrary loan from our library, it's got a tremendous amount of stuff about Lysander, and it's indexed. From her book, it is possible that people first came to Radisson site as long ago as 7000 BC. There is evidence that about 1000 BC, years ago, the Iroquois Indians were on this site. The Iroquois never made their home here, but they camped at various spots in Radisson along the Seneca River. Their tools, weapons, and other things have been found to establish that fact. They cached food here, which indicates they stayed longer than overnight. Perhaps they set up a fishing or a hunting camp here. Or possibly they maintained a camp here to keep track of river traffic. On the opposite side of the Seneca River, there's land where land is much higher. Sites of former Iroquois villages have been found. Radisson lies within the vast territory once claimed by the Onondaga Indians. Now, Pierre Esper Radisson was one of the most remarkable of a number of explorers who opened the mid-continent for France, and then for nearly 100 years held it against the growing power of the English. When he was 16, he was captured by a band of Mohawk Indians, taken to their village near Fort Orange, which is now Albany, and adopted by a chief. He lived with them for a year and a half. During that time, he visited this area with a party of Mohawks. He later escaped and set up a fur trading business. He was also involved with the Saint Marie de Onondaga, which is in today's Liverpool site. We have extensive diaries to thank him for what he did. Now, military track. Here's a picture of the military track in our area. There are others, but this is the most noted one. A little happened in the Radisson area until after the Revolutionary War. In 1791, the federal government announced a land bonus for veterans. Depending upon their rank, a veteran received from 600 to 6,000 acres of land in various designated wilderness areas. One of these areas, 1.5 million acre tract, called the military tract, included the current town of Lysander and the site of Radisson. At the time that the formation of the military tract was announced, there were only 7,500 people living west of the Unadilla Valley. Now that's down near south of down near Horseheads and what area. 30 short years later, that number had increased to 700,000. Most of the families came from New England, using the level water routes. At one point in the trail, 1,000 families were counted in one day moving west. They came by boat, raft, wagon, and on foot. In the winter months, they kept right on coming by sledge. The waterway west of Albany was unbroken except for a 1-mile portage between the Mohawk River and Wood Creek, the eastern outlet of Oneida Lake, reaching the confluence of the Oneida, Seneca, and Sligo rivers at the site of Radisson. Many families found the rich soil and level land of the central New York a welcome relief from the thin soil and steep hills of New England. Now, the Revolutionary War one Revolutionary War veteran who profited greatly from the land bonus was Colonel Marinus Willett. It was he who, through the federal grant of 3,000 acres, became the owner of part of the Radisson site. On July 9th, 1790, as part of the veterans bonus, he was given letters of patent lot number 88 in the township 1, which is Lysander. Part of Radisson is located on that lot, and he was well deserving of this reward since he played several important roles in the American Revolution, including working closely with Washington. There is no clear record of Colonel Willett ever establishing a home here, although a large estate was built south of Belgium, which is just a little bit east of us, on the east side of what is now River Road. There's 88. You can see 88 there, down the bottom. And there's Marinus Willett. And there's some discrepancy about who built his house, Colonel Willett or his son, Reverend William Willett. At any rate, the home was an enormous rambling manor. It stood from 1824 until 1970 in various stages of repair and disrepair. That when every attempt was to save it failed, it was burned by the private owner of the land. This is where the timber development is currently built today, which is on River Road. Reverend William, the son, lived in the Willett house while serving his pastorate and helped build the Methodist Church in Belgium about 1828. The church was located on River Road south of Route 31. Radisson's main roadway, Willett Parkway, is named after Colonel Willett. And there's the Willett house. It was a magnificent house that unfortunately became in disrepair, and it had to be they did a practice burn, and that's how they got rid of it. This is a sketch and a photo of the house. An extensive archaeological dig was done before any construction of the timbers bank's development was started. It is available both in the Town of Lysander's office and the public library. Now, in the public library, it's in the local history room, so it cannot be lent out, unfortunately. But it does have an extensive extensive archaeological dig. And this is the picture of the Belgium Methodist Church that was started by Colonel Willett's son, William Willett. As you may guess, Willett Parkway, Marinus Drive, and several other parts of Radisson bear the names of the Willets. Another settler whose name has found its way into the Radisson road signs is Otis Drake. According to tradition, he was the head of a family of 15 who settled here in the early 1800s, and as each of his numerous children married, he built an additional log cabin near his own, thus establishing a sizable settlement for his own family. Many of the settlers in central Lysander, coming from the east, are believed to have disembarked at Drake's Landing and begun their travel to blaze trails from this point. And there's kind of Drake's Landing right there in the loop above where it says Salina. And right there's it's highlighted right there. As time passed, we have the settlement of we had the settling of Baldwinsville, the dam, the Baldwin Canal, more settlers, saw, grist, woolen, flour, and knitting mills, and later the Erie Canal. Although the main part of the Erie Canal was south of here, its branches, such as the Oswego Canal, were very close to here and affected this area greatly. Oops. Sorry, many pages. This is put in female charitable society. We have in Baldwinsville, we have an organization that was called Female Charitable Society that was started in 1817 after the year without a summer, which was 1816. And they started this organization to help people in our area, including the United Indians on the edge of that were camped on the edge of the village. Anyways, it's going very strong today. Its most noted thing is that we loan sick equipment to anybody in the Baldwinsville School District free of charge, and we're all volunteers and maintain a loan closet where anybody can come and borrow, including hospital beds, which is very rare. But wheelchairs and crutches and canes and commodes and wheeled walkers and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm very proud of that. We do a lot. Now, in the 20th century, specialized farming continued locally until well into the 20th century. The following slides are from the 1938 Farm Directory of Onondaga County. Highlighted here is the Radisson area, the blue square. At one time or another, the land was used for grain, corn, flax, hops, potato, and tobacco growing. Dairy farming and cheese making were tried here from time to time. Once thoroughbred horses were raised here, shown on the northeast part of the section of the Oswego River Stock Farm, operated by the Pendergast brothers. They were well known throughout the nation and even throughout the world for their expertise in cattle breeding. They even developed a breed of thoroughbred horses that were world renowned. The original Clydesdales from the Anheuser-Busch family came from this farm, according to the family. I've never been able to document that, but anyways, that's what I was told by the family. Also, the Phoenix Fairgrounds and its well-known racetrack was located here. This is a forerunner of the New York State Fair. In the southeast corner is highlighted the Canino Farm, known for its prize farm horses. Views of the Pendergast Farm. On the left is the farm, and on the right is the racetrack, home of the Phoenix Fair. The road barely visible is the River Road up on the upper picture. Here we have the same map with the farmers from that area labeled. A memory from B. McMahon, who grew up near the corner of 60 and Lamson Road and attended a school on the Wright's Corners, one room schoolhouse. She recalls picking strawberries where the pond on 60 Road is now, and at that time it was a farm. In 1910, there were flourishing commercial strawberry, aster, and peony farms in the area, except for some farms and other residents of the Radisson site remained fairly inactive until another war brought extensive activity here. The school, right below the word Johnson, is where the Radisson sign is. Now here's the school, the Chestnut Ridge School. We had many one-room schoolhouses in our area. Shown here is the 1941 class from Chestnut Ridge School, a one-room schoolhouse that was located where the Radisson Medical Center is now. The students from bottom left are Fred Hudson, John Kingsley, Bill McArdle, Mary and Barbara and Nancy McArdle, Don Hudson, David Kingsley, Frank Buffano, and John McArdle. Middle is Dick McArdle, Carl Hobbs, Kenneth McArdle, Irma Jean Hudson, Gail McArdle, John Buffano, Carl McArdle, Alan McArdle, Wanda Jenna, and top is Raymond Hawson, Phyllis Hudson, and the teacher is Miss Parlow. Then Gene Johnson and Fred Hausler. 'N' 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 ' Then we have the next section, Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, the beginning of World War II. Army area boundary change may let 50 farmers remain. 50 farms near Phoenix to be bought by Army. Army purchase area, order goes to judge. Army track acquisition is speeding. Priorities keep family in Army area. And this is quoted from a series of articles by Alan Baker, assisted by Bob Haskell, and he was an editor of our Messenger, which is our local newspaper. Pomeroy Organization and Arthur Stitz, caretaker of the abandoned Ordnance Works. Early in March of 1942, orders to evacuate the area to the area east of the DL&W Railroad between the Seneca and the Oswego Rivers were received by some 250 families, giving substance to the rumor that some kind of government project was in the offing. Local real estate offices hummed with activity as many of the evicted farmers and other residents sought new quarters. We have now have a lot of extensive collection of maps and books that we bound of the declassified information. So all of this is most of this is part of the Radisson has come from the declassified information. Note the roads. The 60 Rod Road is now called 60 Road. Affected in the immediate Baldwinsville area were the chicken farms of Robert Wood, the fox farm of John Felix, farms on the Chestnut Ridge Road and 60 Road, a stock farm operated by the Pendergast brothers, and the Cray Miller turkey farm, as well as the Canino, Boling, and Godfrey farms. A large number of camps on the Seneca River, east boundary of the track, were also affected. The following two slides show the Manning. Two slides show the man-warring farm that was located where the Town of Lysander office building is now, and then the house of the McCardle farm that was moved across the street and is still standing today. It's the house east of, for the you that know our area, east of Physical Peria Plus. Oh, there's the man-warring farm, site of Lysander Town office. And here's the moving of the house that from across the street from on 31. It still exists. It's easy to find if you're driving by because of the cupola on top. And we continue. Here's the Pendergast farm, Godfrey and Canino. And we have quite a bit of information on the Pendergast farm, which was, they were really, because of the fair, whatnot, and all the prized animals they had. And here's a picture of the Canino auction. An advertisement in the Herald Journal, which is a Syracuse newspaper, on March 26, 1942. Prize horses sold at public auction at Canino Farm. Machinery, 31 head of cattle, supplies of hay, grain, 8 horses, including a team which won the national pulling contest at the state fair last year. The Foster McMahon family has an old diary from Etta Hyatt Foster that has several entries pertaining to the auction on farms that were abandoned. Now, I think I said already, they had like 30 days to get off their property and find new housing and new occupations in many cases. Here's the advertisement for the Oswego River Stock Farm, better known as Pendergast. And you can see that all the things that they had to get rid of. Now, from the Oswego Palladium Times newspaper on March 10th, 1942, the headline said, 50 farms near Phoenix to be bought by Army. It also told about Robert C. Church being the relocation advisor. His job was to handle the problems arising from the relocation of residents. I've also learned from Doug Church, his son, that their farm was able to obtain a building from one of the abandoned properties. And he made it into a corn crib storage building. It happens to be Doug Church happens to be my deceased brother-in-law. Now, and from another man who's now deceased is Ralph Pomeroy, who quoted the Post-Standard article of November 27th, 1989, by Robert W. Andrews. Ralph Pomeroy came to Lysander in 1934, worked as a farmhand for $1.50 a day, and managed to earn enough money in 1941 to buy a 200-acre farm along River Road. Then, in April of 1942, a government man gave him 42 days to get off his land. He was one of 134 Lysander land owners told to evacuate quickly that the government officials described as the project. He said, I had 40 cows, a team of horses, farm machinery, a new wife. It wasn't much time. This house is the brick house a little north of the Belgian Bridge on River Road. And from Jack Horner, another person, former Baldwinsville resident and Town of Lysander historian, said that he remembers that his dad was able to obtain a toilet from one of the abandoned houses, and that's how they got indoor plumbing. Another person says she remembers that the house where a female charitable society was found was in disrepair, but the government still made the owners tear it down because someone might be able to see over into the ordnance works. Highly secretive. And here, within a month, construction of a huge ordnance plant began on 7,000 acres, with more than 3,000 workers employed at the peak of construction. By January of 1943, less than a year later, the plant was in operation. And here's where they're looking for workers. The plant was under high scrutiny. 10 miles of chain link fencing with elevated guard towers at distances of not greater than 1,500 feet along the entire periphery protected it. At night, floodlights played on all the perimeter areas. Inside were 88 main buildings and more than 20 miles of roads. 8,000 men and women worked there. They made, processed, and shipped dinitrochlorobenzene, more familiarly known as explosive D. It was used in armor-piercing shells, and it, in its process, was a deadly business. Explosive D was made basically from a peaceful enough coal tar derivative used for dye making. But by the time the works got through treating it with nitric and sulfuric acids, boiling it and cooling it, and finally shipping it, it was anything but peaceful. It was stored in concrete magazines located on the area which is now the Game Management Preserve. Now, why here? Here is listed some reasons for why it was built here. An adequate supply of chemically trained labor in the northern part of the state. Adequate supply of heavy acids, organic materials, the raw material that made the chemical industries in New York. Adequate power made available by the Niagara Hudson facilities. Adequate water, and the fact that this plant's location in Baldwinsville would be at the confluence of the Seneca, Oneida, and Oswego rivers, ensuring a water supply of the essential of the plant of nature. And that, by the way, that's the area is called Three Rivers. Location approximately 13 miles northeast of Syracuse, skilled and semi-skilled labor. Central railroad point of New York State. Natural prevailing winds to carry off industrial acid fumes so that it wouldn't affect the neighboring community. Natural ridge, that drumlin we talked about, located approximately in the middle of the plant area, lent itself advantageously to gravity in the transfer of the corrosive materials. Building sites were selected so as to isolate the manufacturing area from the neighboring communities. Site was formerly small tracts of farmland and intermittent areas of secondary growth. Local natural camouflage. This reduced the maintenance required to keep the area debris from fire hazards. The most dangerous operation was conducted in buildings along the east side of Radisson Drumlin. It was done so that in the event of explosion, Baldwinsville would be shielded from danger. Never mind the fact that east of here was a little community called, it's not much of a community now, but it was called Belgium on the same road. But fortunately, there was never an explosion. Now here are the three main areas: the administrative area, the ammonium picrate area, and the acid area. This is an aerial view of the York Ordnance Works. Note the placement of north to the right. And you should recognize 60 or 60 Rod Road, River Road, Three Rivers, and Route 31. The circle at the left is the administration area. The one in the middle is the ammonium picrate area on the drumlin. And the top is the acid area. Now, all these are declassified pictures, which we're very fortunate to have. This is, they showed the acid area. The house, just above the letter N on administration is where the Radisson sign is today, and that is Route 31 is the road that goes there, just below that label. And here's the administration area, in the area of the sign, as I said. Administration area again. Again, the administration area, different view. And there's the actual administration building. And the men that worked there, they didn't know, it wasn't always the same, but they were the ones that were the head. And then we had the railroad area. And the ammonium picrate area, which was the main crux of the thing, the most dangerous part of the works. Sorry. Okay. Safety regulations were highly restrictive. To work there, employees had to adhere to quite a number of rules. Since gasoline was rationed, getting to work wasn't easy. The public buses schedules didn't coincide with the second and third shifts, so a share of the ride program was instituted. The vehicles were parked on a lot near the administration area, where with Radisson sign is today. Then they boarded buses to reach their workstations if they were not within walking distance. Everyone entering the plant was searched. Those going into the so-called critical area where production facilities were contained, located on the west of Willett Parkway near the historic marker sign, they had to go through a shakedown right down to their pant cuffs. No matches, cigarettes, and even mechanical pencils could be brought in. 3 change houses were located near the 6 picrate lines. Employees had to disrobe completely, even their underwear. Then don long johns, a white powder suit, gloves, skull cap, and several special shoes whose soles conducted away any static charge to prevent accidental explosions. At the end of the shift, the worker would leave all his apparel in a laundry box. He had to pass through a shower to reach his street clothes. No choice. The shower was mandatory. A laundry working around the clock maintained the supply of clean clothing. If a worker got sprayed with the acid, they very quickly ran to the safety shower and pulled the cord. It's been said that the moment the water hit the guy, the clothes would fall right off his body. Now, other things that they had to have for regulations. Identification. Two means of ID were provided each employer, a folder and a circular name badge. Injuries. Any injury needs to be reported immediately and you must go to the medical center. Personal care, daily baths, care of spills on the skin. Sabotage. Watch out for suspicious action on the part of anyone in or near the plant and report the same at once. Sabotage can destroy yourself, you and the plant. Safety equipment in order to protect its employee and to avoid hazards. Um, Wearing of selected types of specialty footwear and special clothing by the personnel is mandatory. Search. Employees must be searched daily. No matches, lighters, automatic pencils or pens, or any device or material which has been declared contraband can be carried into the plant. Remember this: dinitrochloro um, pentothal, pitric acid, and ammonium picrate are potentially explosive when dry. This condition is aggravated when the dry product is exposed to heat. For this reason, any accumulation of these products on floors, walls, or ceilings or pieces of equipment have to be avoided. Here's a picture of the ammonium picrate area, and if you very carefully go by the sign that's on Willett Parkway, it's still evidence. It's still evidence of where it was, but I'll show that at the end. And this is an aerial view showing the administration area, the main house, and the chemical factory. Again, as you can see at the bottom of the slide, those are declassified pictures from the Ordnance Works. Or northwest from Chestnut Ridge, northwest from Chestnut Ridge Construction. This is the building of it. View from Chestnut Ridge. Leveling of the filtering of the picrate, ammonium picrate area. There's a gentleman checking the dials. And here's another one. And one of the times I've done this program several times. It's been quite a while since I've done it, but a gentleman was in the audience. He says, "That's my grandmother." So I now have an identification of the lady, and his name is Alice Niver, and she's working with the explosions or monitoring the explosions. Here's another one showing monitoring the picrate. Picrate acid is filtered by a powder-suited worker in one of the ammonium picrate buildings. And there's the boxing it up. Explosive D packed in the 100-pound boxes, ready for shipment. Note: worker with powder suit and special static-free shoes to prevent explosion. The worker demonstrates an escape chute, quick way out of the explosive producing buildings. Now here's a stanchion that once held the vats of the ammonium picrate building in the underground storage. There's still some of those available in the evidence. And we have the acid area. And this is off of 60 Road or 60 Rod Road, off of Route 31. All those were boiler house near completion. Water line construction on New York Ordnance Works. Aerial view of the water pumping station for construction. Construction of the million gallon water storage tank. And there's the million gallon water storage tank. Quite extensive. I said before, 88 buildings. Right. Railroad. The reflection from another person. Late Lyman Abbott was an electrician, village official, and a member of the school board, and he helped construct a building, and afterwards was given the job as a night foreman on the acid plant. He told of wearing hip boots in the building when it rained because the ground was very swampy. He said that the acid plant was 60 rods along one side of Potter Road, and it was a two or three story black building. He told that the picric acid was a powerful asbestos acid that if it dripped on them, they had to shower with clothes on because it would eat through their clothes to the skin. They then had to change their clothes. His father-in-law worked as an ordinary worker and stated that he had never made so much money in his life. Recollection of his son, of Lyman Abbott's son, Charles. Potter Road was Lover's Lane in the 1950s. That was after they did away with the Ordnance Works. Charles was a train buff and recalls that after the Asser estate bought the property, that they took all the equipment out of the boxcars on the outside fence with a dinghy because they didn't want them going, people that taken it off going into the classified area. Another recollection from Head Gates Hudson, he was told that they were looking for someone to fix tires. Since he had been a manager of different gas stations in the area, he was hired on the spot. By the time that he was hired, the project was well underway. The work was very difficult, as some tires were huge and demanded much time and energy, but it was steady work and the pay was good. During the war, tires were very scarce for the general public, and due to this situation, some on the job took advantage of the tire abundance. Since he was honest, he was promoted to personal driver to the concrete foreman, taking him around to different sites for inspections. Sometimes he was on the job for days at a time, sleeping and driving and not often home for a day or two at a time. Some improvements over the changing of repairs, though. They used so much concrete on the site that they had their own concrete plant. After the project was completed, he worked at the gunpowder section. They had to park near 31, bus north to what is now Willett Parkway on a change to the change house where they stripped for security and donned issued work clothes. The only thing allowed in the mesh allowed in of their own was their lunchbox. The pockets of the issued work clothes were made of mesh fabric, probably because they didn't want a gunpowder to leave the area. So more buildings. Magazine possibly used for escape with explosion. Fortunately, there never was an explosion, but they were all set for whatever might come. Another picture of the storage area. Those buildings kind of still exist. They use that. Radisson Community uses it for storage for their groundskeeping stuff. You notice the igloo at the right. Now, a year and 2 months after production began, it was stopped. Following the war, the property was declared surplus and the works was abandoned. Now we have this sales. This is a sales brochure that they had. Sales brochure and from messenger articles of 1961, the guidelines of purchasing property. On December 22nd, 1945, several houses became available for lease. In January of 1946, it was reported that the use of a large building would be for veterans housing. This never happened. In April of 1946, The sale of over 4,636 acres was made available. This was conducted under a strict set of priorities. First priority, given to agencies of the federal government. Second, to state and local governments. Former owners had third priority on lands that were purchased after December 31st, 1939, and fourth went to spouses and children of deceased servicemen. Six went to owner operators, and seventh to certain types of nonprofit organizations. Last but not least, final priority was the general public. Now, the following slides are from the sales brochure. Too many pages in my notebook. This is another recollection from the late Sue Lefevre, whose great uncle Tony Rock lived year-round in the small house he built in 1938 on the Oswego River on what was previously part of the Pendergast lands. He was 600 feet off River Road and had no electricity or running water. Sue's brother remembers hearing the news of the bombing of Pearl Harbor while visiting his uncle. When the government took his property, he was paid $1,500 and they tore down his house. On May 1946, he was able to buy the land back and was paid $100. Since Tony has relocated to Hayes Road on the Seneca River, he turned the property over to his brother, Sue's grandfather. She and Sue's dad built the camp on the bottom left using a glider box for half of it. It was a surplus government material. The glider box portion remains and is still used as a shed. The top photos show Sue's neighbor's camp, which was also built by the government surplus materials. This belonged to the Douglas family, who originally purchased their land in 1935 from the Pendergasts. They were paid $900 for their property and original camp, which was also torn down. They paid $50 to get their land back in 1946. Another neighbor has a patio, which was built with bricks that came from the Ordnance Works. Now, you may recognize the gentleman in the upper left. That's Carmen Basilio. In July of 1946, the town of Lysander was upset by plans of the State Conservation Department when it announced that the government sought 3,500 acres of the Ordnance Works property for use with a game refuge. They did not want the property removed from the tax rolls. The county said that while they were eager to acquire the land in connection with the 50-acre reforestation project, which was started before the war, that's at the intersection of 60 and Kellogg Roads, it would not stand in the way of the state decided to acquire the larger land. Eventually, the state purchased 3,000 acres and named it the Conservation Commission Game Sanctuary. Today, that is better known as Three Rivers Game Preserve. International fame has been brought to this area with the pheasant dog field trials. They used to have lots of publicity about this and many people in town during the trials. I understand that the publicity is played down now because the public interferes with the dogs running the race, and I don't think they hold it that much anymore. I know there is much more to know about the preserve and would be interested in talking to someone of authority there. I can remember as a Girl Scout that we had day camp. We did day camp in one of the buildings. In August of 1946, a huge area became under further scrutiny when members of the State Fair Commission toured the area with possible eye towards buying 2,200 acres for the fair site. Also in August of 46, it was revealed that Syracuse University had obtained use of some of the buildings for the Ordnance Works for housing students beginning in the fall. One such student was Dick Manville, former owner of our local newspaper. This was his first introduction to Baldwinsville. Little did he know that after graduating from SU in journalism, that he would make his home here and become an important part of the community. In 1948, local school officials were toying with the idea of receiving part of administration building for use. Their hopes vanished in October when the announcement that a transaction with public interest included all structures above and below the ground of the reservation. In July 17, 1952, announcement was made that one of the largest real estate transactions ever to occur in the Baldwinsville area, the purchase of 2,030 acres by the bank representing the estate of William Waldorf Astor, reported cost $325,000 for the land. Report was that it would develop the tract into industrial, business, and residential purposes. One business was the Del Nero Houses Incorporated. In 1959, this company pioneered the production of prefab houses for occupancy when they were moved to the owner's site. They manufactured in two of the Ordnance Works buildings. In August of 1950, the site map of the development of Valley View was filed, and the Town of Lysander development began. 1955. The property was sold to the Gregory Bonus and Taft Church in Equity of Syracuse. Rumor was that SSU would develop a research center there. That was false. Other things. After the Ordnance Works ceased operation and before it moved to Lock Street, the village of Baldwinsville DPW was located in one of the leftover buildings. But Bob Bitts from the Plainville Turkey Farms was able to obtain lighting for some of the turkey houses from its abandoned buildings. And for the third time, the government was taken over by a government agency. On September 9th, 1970, the Post-Standard had the headline, Officials get sneak preview of new Lysander community. Quoting from the first paragraph, final draft of plans for the proposed $240 million new Lysander community development near Baldwinsville, now under review, probably will be made available to the public next month and then be subjected to public hearings late in 1971. It also stated that under the present plans, the first industrial development of the site will be next year, 1971, with the first housing likely to sprout in 1972. It also stated that it may take up to 15 years to complete the total planned development on the 2,700-acre site, which occupies the old Baldwinsville Ordnance Works area. When the State Urban Development Corporation project is complete, there will be a new, carefully planned community of about 5,000 families, between 1,800 and 20,000 peoples, where now only underbrush and mostly unoccupied land exist. This did not set well with the residents of the Baldwinsville area, fearing that they would lose their identity. One public hearing brought out 400 residents to a 4.5-hour meeting discussion of the plan. In late December of 1971, after much heated debate, including a lawsuit from local residents, it was ruled that the UDC had the right to begin developing as planned. Now, the concrete foundations along the east side of the Drumlin off Willett Parkway were part of the main manufacturing area. They supported acid vats used in processing explosive. Designs of the architectural structure that identifies Radisson's main entrance on Route 31 used the shape of the cradles to support those vats as the basis for the design. The actual cradles are half the size of those in the structure, but five of There were 5 in the area of the drumlin. The shaded area in this area is today's Radisson. Note the drumlin in the middle and the river at the east and the 31 at the bottom. Now, construction of the Lysander new community. Schlitz Brewery was the first industry to come to the site under the UDC ownership. It started construction in 1973 with a cost of $150 million. Its facility covered 193 acres with a roof area equivalent of 20 football fields. It could store 28 railroad cars, 50 feet long, inside the warehouse. The total capacity was 370,000 cases per day. It invested approximately $20 million in waste treatment facilities, other ecologically oriented equipment. Nearly $2 million was invested in to protect the natural habitat of the Three Rivers Game Management Preserve. The grand opening was 1977. In 1974, the State Union Development Corporation let the first contract for housing at the Radisson new community. The first stage housing was near 2 man-made ponds, a swimming pool, and a walkway system and tot lots. It was stated that eventually 18,000 people would call Radisson home. In January of 75, a newspaper headline said, "First residents expected very soon at Radisson." In 1980, Anheuser-Busch Incorporated purchased the Baldwinsville brewery from Schlitz Brewing. The first brewing was in early February of 1983. Anheuser-Busch invested $200 million in the plant in purchase and renovations to keep up with the first of the company's brews. More than 1,000 construction workers and others were busy making the plant. Its services UK, Canada, Puerto Rico, Switzerland, Spain, El Salvador, and the US. The current fact sheet from 2008, which may need to be updated, but stated the following. It has 940 employees, a floor area of 1.5 million square feet, with an annual capacity of 7.6 million barrels per year. The annual payroll is 67 million. It produces 47 brands of products. It ships approximately 230 trucks per day. And the past decade, it was contributing more than 2.1 million for the number of local organizations. In 1990, Anheuser was accused of polluting the Seneca River with high levels of beer waste, violating the state discharge permit for the second time in 2 years. In December of '89, Anheuser-Busch agreed to pay $1.2 million in criminal fines and civil priorities of polluting the Seneca River. It was one of the largest cash settlements for an environmental crime in the state history. In 1992, it was cited for reducing the amount of trash sent to landfill by 2,300 tons in 1951. It received a certificate of environmental achievement from the Renew America, a national environmental organization, Anheuser, now known as InBev. If we go to the Radisson website, you will find that many other businesses that operated in the corporate part, besides Anheuser-Busch, and Anheuser-Busch is the largest employee, but they've done a lot in our area. Now, as I said, take a look at 1981, where the Ordnance Works was investigated for the hazardous waste site. After much investigation, nothing was ever found that was left from the Ordnance Works. It's been explored many times. Now here's a little spot that I want to take a look at. This is a 2018 map of Radisson, and the red circle There's the 2008. They're saying, according to the Radisson website, it's currently 70% complete. When finished, it will contain 3,500 houses and have a population of 10,000 people, 10,000 families. Oops, what am I doing here? That's the wrong thing. There we go. I was fortunate enough to get a look at my sister-in-law's abstract. She now doesn't live there anymore, but her abstract shows the landowners from the time of the farmers that were on the land before the project came. It shows it's taken over by the government, bought by Astor Inspector, the UDC, and the contractor, and finally my sister-in-law. With the Lysander files, historical fires, we could trace it from the military track all the way to the present time. The next slides are Radisson's today, highlighting some of the leftovers of the previous occupation. These are from 2008. This is acid area photos. Now it's now demolished. I went in 2008. I went back in there very carefully with some other people. And this was the really. I've been told that the dogs that ran around in there turned orange, and people that worked with the acid ended up with orange hands and orange hair. And I know of a lady, Rosemary Senate Nesbitt, who's very well known in this area. She worked there, and she was very proud of the fact that she could buy a tweed coat. It wasn't very long before the buttons were all orange because of the acid. These are cradles and remains of a farm on the site on Potter Road. Former trolley bed, dam, man-made pond for the Ordnance Works. Bunker area off of Potter Road heading north. Potter Road heading east to the right to the right is part of what is now Chestnut Ridge Road. Radisson Community has a lot of walking trails. And the walking trail off River Road. And this is Town Center Road on the right, just past the intersection of Willett Parkway. This was a dirt road to the top of the drumlin. And this photo was 2008. It's now the growth of the trees are very much bigger. This is if you park near the Aspen House, Ammonium Pike Rate area built on the side of the drumlin. Note the walking trail on the right. Cradles are held in the acid vats opposite Aspen House, just off the walkway by Drumlin Heights. You can go on this, and there's a walkway right there. Notice the walkway. There's one of the cradles, and this is where they fed the acid down the hill. Yeah, that's a hill that goes down, and see where the bend is in the road that goes down there, and there the Drumlin Heights fencing on top. More pictures of the walk. Drumlin Heights remains of the storage tanks. Same area facing north. The hill is used for gravity to take the products. There's the same trail. More remains of the gravity. Another view. And a slide. Now the slide now removed. It's opposite Aspen House. They took it down, decided it was too dangerous. And now this is us up on top. You got to be very, very careful. I wouldn't do it today, obviously, but you can go up on top and see the leanings of the the leanings of the ammonium pike rate areas. And we now have, thanks to the Pomeroy Foundation, we now have I got a marker up through a grant from the Willett Pam Pomeroy, World War II site of New York Ordnance Works, 1942 to 1945, manufactured explosive D used in armor-piercing shells. And that kind of is it in a nutshell. Anybody have any questions? Oops.
Oh, yes, Janine.
Yeah. Okay. So I apologize that I had to come in and out, and I may have missed something, but there were at least 3 times when the government came in and took
Oh,
over.
the first was the military track, and then World War II, and then the UDC.
Was that happening throughout Onondaga County?
The
Again, the
yeah,
government's coming in and
there's the military track.
okay,
See that whole, so the Shenango County, Madison County,
got it.
okay?
Yep.
So there's the military track. There's a extensive amount of stuff. We've got, I believe that we have, I'm sure we do have to circulate the military track booklet that tells quite a bit about it. There's quite a bit
Thank you.
written too, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, that was the first time the government kind of took over.
And I said Onondaga, but I know whatever. We're involving multiple counties.
Yes, and if you see
Yeah.
that, yeah, you can see that from that map.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Onondaga is only up in the.
Mm-hmm.
Were you also wondering about the New York Ordnance Works, the World War II, and
I'm wondering, sure.
yeah, Mom? What about the New York Ordnance Works? Were there other sites in central New York that were involved in that? Do you know?
No, I don't believe so. That were part of the. There were other sites. I think there was there. I think there were other places they manufactured stuff, but that I not in Onondaga County. Well, although let's see, what's the explosive in the one that where it exploded over by Solvay. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. Anyways, but that's not connected with the ordnance work. So I'm trying to think.
There's a Split Rock massacre.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, Split Rock in 1918.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that was later.
You mean early? That was wasn't Split
Oh
Rock?
yeah, earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, earlier. Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah.
I hope it all made sense.
And I will be sending out our speaker has agreed to have me send out a copy of the slides, and then I've also got I'll have a copy of the a walking tour of Radisson that highlights the different spots in Radisson that you can, for those of you who are local, but I mean for those who aren't local, you can still kind of get an idea.
Some
And
of it is where the leavings of farms. You can see like a stone wall or something that's behind current houses. So
yeah,
some of that, but and then I've been told that the golf course, I forgot what hole it is, but there was a mound at that hole, and that's where there was a silo.
ah,
That's kind of also hidden in there on that walking tour.
And then I'll also have a PDF copy. There's articles by the articles by Alan Baker that were mentioned. We'll also have that to send out. Those will come out later today. Those will be in your email inbox later today, this
And
afternoon.
they are all on front. There was a series of about 12 articles that he did for the Messenger, the local newspaper, and it's all on the front pages. So if you pick out, if you got other information besides
Well,
besides
I'll take care of getting those out. It'll be one PDF of the 12 articles rather than sending out the 12 separate articles. I figured it might be easier that way. So look for those coming in your inbox by 5 o'clock Eastern this afternoon. Right. Um, are there other questions or comments for our speaker?
I have one. We have she's also got the a little flyer that lists what we have in our library. We have a tremendous amount of maps. We've got huge big maps that show the property that and who lived there, and we've got diagrams and just a tremendous amount of stuff. If you're in our area, it's worth looking at.
And when she says that, she means what Baldwinsville Public Library has in their
Yeah.
local history room. Yes, thank you for that reminder, Mom. Yes. And before we lose too many of you, I will let you know that next week, that our next talk is next week, and it will be. I know I had said October was a two-part series, but we're going to do a wrap up of crafting your legacy, and this will be um, uh, how to sustain your family history writing. There'll be a sort of overview of how to go about selecting a writing group and what to expect from that. But then there'll also be an opportunity to share uh, a short vignette, a short few, just looking for a short paragraph of something you might have written given the holiday that will be following next, that will be following next week. You might pick uh, to share a family gathering of some type to write about. If you're willing to share, I figured this would be a friendly, supportive group to share writing with, and just to give you a taste of what you could expect from a writing group. And that will, of course, be from 10 to 11 Eastern on Zoom, and I will be sending that notice out along with the PDFs this afternoon. So you can look for that in your inbox by 5 o'clock Eastern, coming from lhg@onlib.org. Okay. And in the meantime, are there any other questions for our speaker? Oh, I do see there are. Oh, and I do see it's 11:15. So if you think of any other questions, one other thing I will do for those of you who are still on, I will make sure that I get you the email address, the library email address for our speaker, and I will, and of course you'll be having my email address from as the one that's sending everything out. So if you have any questions, do just pop them out in email, and we'll be seeing you next week and looking forward to it. So take care and have a good week.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Welcome.